At 9:30 on the 28th of October 1944, a single U.S. sergeant stepped into the Mortagne forest carrying a weapon that wasn't even his, because the last men who tried to aim their rifles on that trail were already dead. 3 German MG-42s had turned 9 meters of woodland into a killing zone, pinning 150 Americans to the mud while another 200 GIs were cut off ahead, running out of ammunition and time. Lucien Adams had no radio, no spotter, and barely enough rounds for one fight. What he had was an understanding the Germans didn't realize they were betraying the forest trail they trusted to reveal American movement could also be used to deceive them. In the next 10 minutes, Adams would exploit that mistake, kill 9 enemy soldiers, silence 3 machine guns, and reopen a lifeline that kept an entire battalion alive. The Mortagne forest was built for ambush, not maneuver. Dense beech and oak choked visibility to less than 30 meters, and a low morning fog turned every sound into a warning without direction. The Germans understood this terrain perfectly. They did not try to dominate the forest itself. They dominated the trail that cut through it. 3 MG-42 machine guns were positioned so their fields of fire overlapped along that single narrow path, each weapon capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute. Any movement on the trail was instantly punished. Company K had already learned this lesson the hard way. In the first 2 minutes of contact, 3 men were killed and 6 wounded. After 45 minutes of fighting, the company had advanced less than 10 yards. Men lay flat in mud and leaves, unable to raise their heads without drawing fire. Riflemen with M1 Garands were dying before they could even acquire targets. The trail had become a fixed equation. Helmet appears, gun fires, body falls. Worse still, the fight was not only about Company K. Somewhere ahead, an entire battalion had been cut off for 3 days. Their supply line was severed. Ammunition was nearly gone. Medical resupply was impossible. If the trail could not be reopened, those 200 men would be destroyed without the Germans ever needing to overrun them. Captain Morris understood the reality. Firepower alone was failing. Standard infantry movement was failing. So he made a desperate decision and sent Staff Sergeant Lucien Adams forward with a borrowed Browning automatic rifle. Adams was a rifleman, not a BAR gunner. He carried no radio, had no supporting fire plan, and only 60 rounds of ammunition. His task was simple and impossible at the same time. Break through 3 prepared machine gun positions that had already stopped an entire company. As Adams stepped off the line and into the trees, he understood something critical. The Germans were not just killing Americans with machine guns. They were killing them by predicting where a soldier was supposed to be. If he followed the trail like everyone else, he would die like everyone else. The Browning automatic rifle felt unfamiliar in Adams' hands the moment he moved forward. At nearly 19 pounds loaded, it pulled at his arms and shifted his balance as he stepped between trees. He had been trained on the M1 Garand, 8 deliberate shots, quick target acquisition, discipline in every trigger pull. The BAR was different. It was a squad weapon, built to dominate space with volume, not to slip through it quietly. In the Mortagne forest, that difference mattered. Visibility collapsed as soon as he left the company's position. Fog clung low to the ground, and cordite hung in the air from the constant machine gun fire ahead. Rifle grenades detonated in the canopy, snapping branches and raining splinters onto American helmets. One explosion burst overhead and drove a heavy branch down onto Adams' helmet, knocking him forward a step. He did not stop. Stopping meant being fixed in place, and fixed positions were exactly what the MG-42s were designed to destroy. He moved tree to tree, carrying the BAR low at his hip. There was no time to shoulder the weapon properly, no clear lane to align iron sights. Instead, Adams listened. The MG-42 had a sound unlike any American weapon, a high-pitched mechanical scream, fast and continuous, as if metal were tearing itself apart. The Germans called it Hitler's zipper. American infantry called it the buzzsaw. To Adams, it was a locator beacon. Each burst told him exactly where death was coming from. Tracer rounds cut through the fog in flat green streaks, marking the beaten zones along the trail. Adams stayed just outside them, stepping where a man was not expected to be. He understood now that the Germans were not watching the forest. They were watching the path. Their guns were aimed where helmets usually appeared, where bodies usually moved, where doctrine said the enemy would advance. Adams let that assumption work against them as he closed the distance, counting his steps, feeling the weight of the borrowed weapon, and knowing that once he was close enough, there would be no second attempt. The first machine gun position revealed itself in flashes rather than shapes. Through the fog and branches, Adams saw the yellow bloom of the muzzle and the oscillation of the barrel as the gunner swept fire across the trail. The position was close, less than 10 yards, protected by a low berm of logs and packed earth. At that distance, firing the BAR would be wasteful and dangerous. The noise alone would draw the attention of the other two guns, and the recoil would scatter rounds where precision mattered most. Adams chose silence. He reached for an M2 fragmentation grenade, pulled the pin, and let the fuse burn for 2 seconds as he counted in his head. He threw low and hard. The grenade dropped cleanly into the position. The explosion was muted by the earthworks, but the effect was immediate. The MG-42 stopped. Adams did not pause to confirm the kill. Confirmation was a luxury for men who were not alone in front of an enemy line. As he moved past the shattered nest, a German infantryman stepped out from behind a tree to his left, barely 10 yards away. The soldier raised a stick grenade and threw. Adams brought the BAR up from his hip and fired a short burst. The recoil lifted the muzzle, but at that range, the spread did not matter. The German fell before the grenade hit the ground. The stick grenade detonated behind Adams, close enough for the blast wave to slam into his back and push him forward. Shrapnel tore into trees, not flesh. The forest absorbed the fragments meant for him. Adams kept moving, ears ringing, the smell of burned powder and wet earth thick in his lungs. Behind him, the first machine gun position was dead and silent. Ahead, 2 more were still firing, and the Germans now knew that something was moving where no American was supposed to be. The second machine gun position lay farther ahead, slightly elevated on a natural rise. Adams saw the muzzle flash before he saw the gunner's helmet, the dark outline of the stall helm moving as the barrel began to swing toward his approach. He had only seconds. This time, he did not cook the grenade. He pulled the pin and threw immediately, then dropped flat behind the nearest tree as the MG-42 fired. The explosion came from behind the earthworks, sharp and final. When Adams rose, the machine gun was silent. 2 German soldiers stood up near the ruined position, infantry rather than gunners, their hands raised. They were unarmed, stunned by how quickly the position had collapsed. Adams gestured with the muzzle of the BAR, pointing them back toward American lines. He had no men to escort prisoners and no time to watch them. What happened to them next was irrelevant to the mission. He checked his ammunition. 14 rounds remained in the magazine. He ejected it, loaded a fresh 20-round box, and felt his hands begin to tremble. Adrenaline surged, narrowing his vision and distorting time. Adams forced himself to breathe the way he had been taught in training: deep inhale, slow exhale, repeat. The shaking eased, but it did not disappear. The third MG-42 opened fire before he could move again. This gunner had seen the first 2 positions fall and did not wait for Adams to close the distance. The fire was disciplined and deliberate, short bursts walking through the trees toward his last known position. Rounds punched through bark and buried themselves in the trunk behind which Adams had taken cover. One passed completely through the wood and exited inches from his head. Grenades would not reach this position reliably. The distance was too great, the angle uphill, the foliage too dense. Adams understood that the pattern had changed. The Germans were no longer reacting blindly. They were adapting. To survive the next seconds, he would have to abandon stealth and rely on fundamentals, control, sight picture, and timing against a weapon that had already killed men who tried to face it head-on. That is how most wars end, not with closure, but with erosion. Names fade, places return to silence. Only the consequences remain. On one morning in 1944, A single soldier disrupted a system built on predictability and saved hundreds of lives. Everything that followed, including the medal, was secondary. The action at the Morton Forest offers a lesson that goes far beyond medals, weapons, or even warfare itself. At its core, what Lucien Adams demonstrated was not extraordinary strength or supernatural bravery, but an understanding of systems, how they work, how they fail, and how people inside them become predictable without realizing it. The German defense was not weak. In fact, it was technically excellent. 3 MG-42 machine guns, properly sighted, overlapping fields of fire, dominating a narrow trail in restrictive terrain. On paper, it was close to perfect. The weapon itself was among the most effective machine guns ever fielded, capable of pinning down entire units through sheer volume and speed of fire. The placement exploited terrain intelligently. The doctrine was sound, and yet the entire system collapsed in minutes. Not because Adams outgunned it, but because he stepped outside the assumptions it depended on. The first lesson is that most systems kill through predictability, not force. The MG-42s were lethal because they anticipated where American soldiers would appear: helmets, shoulders, bodies moving along a trail. That expectation allowed German gunners to pre-aim, pre-plan, and react instantly. Once Adams stopped behaving like a predictable element in that system, once he stopped appearing where a soldier should be, the advantage of the machine guns diminished rapidly. The weapons did not fail mechanically. The assumptions behind them failed. This applies far beyond combat. In organizations, careers, markets, and even personal conflicts, people often build defenses or strategies based on expected behavior. They prepare for the obvious response, the standard path, the doctrinal move. When someone follows that path, they are easy to counter, easy to suppress, easy to overwhelm. The individual who survives or succeeds is often the one who refuses to play the role the system expects. The second lesson is the difference between courage and decision-making under pressure. Adams did not charge blindly. Every action he took was measured against risk, distance, and available resources. He used grenades when close, the BAR only when distance forced him to. He avoided firing when noise would draw attention. He stopped shooting the moment a threat ceased. This was not reckless bravery. It was disciplined aggression guided by clear thinking in chaos. Popular culture often portrays heroism as emotional intensity, rage, defiance, dramatic speeches. In reality, effective action under extreme stress usually looks quiet, procedural, and unemotional. Adams breathed deliberately to control his body's panic response. He relied on training when improvisation ran out. He conserved ammunition because he understood that running out would end the fight instantly. The lesson here is that clarity beats intensity. In high-stakes situations, the person who can think clearly for 10 minutes often outperforms those who burn hot for 30 seconds. A third lesson is the importance of initiative when hierarchy fails. Company K was pinned. Standard infantry tactics were no longer working. Higher-level solutions, artillery, flanking units, coordinated maneuver, were unavailable in the moment. Adams was not acting as part of a grand plan. He was acting because someone had to, and waiting meant certain failure. His initiative did not break discipline. It preserved the unit. Without that individual decision, the battalion ahead would likely have been destroyed without ever seeing the enemy. This highlights a truth uncomfortable for rigid organizations. Doctrine is a guide, not a substitute for judgment. The German machine gunners followed doctrine perfectly. They stayed at their posts. They fired until overrun or killed. Adams, on the other hand, adapted doctrine to reality. He was trained, but not enslaved by procedure. In any complex system, military, corporate, or social, the ability of individuals to adapt intelligently often determines survival when plans collapse. Another critical lesson lies in Adams' attitude toward recognition. Despite receiving the highest military honor, he did not build his identity around it. He understood that survival and recognition are often products of timing, circumstance, and luck as much as skill. Many men acted with equal courage and competence and died anonymously. This perspective kept him grounded but also isolated. Society prefers clean narratives, heroes and cowards, winners and losers. Adams knew reality was messier. The lesson here is about humility and perspective ***. Success does not always mean superiority. Sometimes it simply means you were in the right place with the right preparation and survived long enough for the outcome to be recorded. Recognizing this does not diminish achievement. It deepens it. It reminds us that credit should be held lightly and responsibility taken seriously. There is also a lesson in how quickly extraordinary actions fade into silence. The Mortagne forest returned to trees and undergrowth. The machine gun positions collapsed into soil. The event survived only in records and memory. This teaches that *** impact is often invisible over time. ***. Many of the most important actions in history leave no monuments. They matter not because they are remembered, but because of what they prevented: deaths that never happened, failures that never unfolded. Finally, the most enduring lesson of all is about ***, stepping off the trail. The trail represents convention, expectation, and habit. It is comfortable because it is shared. It is deadly when the enemy or the system controls it. Adams survived because he recognized that safety did not lie in doing what everyone else was doing, but in doing what the situation demanded, even if it meant acting alone. Lucien Adams did not see himself as exceptional, but his actions reveal a quiet truth. When conditions become impossible, survival and success often belong to the person who understands the system well enough to break it and calm enough to do so without believing their own myth. Another lesson embedded in Adams' experience is the *** illusion of control in complex environments. The German defense at Mortagne looked controlled. Mapped fields of fire, disciplined gunners, superior weapons. Yet that control depended on one fragile condition: that the enemy would behave as expected. The moment Adams violated that expectation, the illusion collapsed. This reveals a dangerous trap in any system built on confidence in planning alone. Plans create a sense of mastery, but reality always reserves the right to change variables without warning. Those who mistake planning for control are often the first to fail when conditions shift. Adams did not try to regain control of the situation. He accepted that he had almost none. Instead, he focused on influence, small, decisive actions that could tip the balance. One grenade, one burst, one position at a time. This is a critical distinction. When people face overwhelming circumstances, they often freeze because they try to solve everything at once. Adams solved only the next problem in front of him. Control was impossible. Progress was not. There is also a lesson in resource awareness. Adams knew exactly how many rounds he carried. He tracked his ammunition under extreme stress, not abstractly, but physically, by feel, by habit. He stopped firing when the gun fell silent. He did not chase kills. He did not spray blindly. Every action was constrained by the reality that running out of ammunition would end the mission immediately. This kind of discipline is rare under pressure. In modern life, people often behave as if resources, time, energy, attention are infinite. Adams' fight shows the opposite. Scarcity sharpens judgment. Knowing what you can afford to lose and what you cannot forces clarity. Those who ignore limits usually discover them at the worst possible moment. This carries a quiet warning. Do not confuse recognition with value. The most meaningful contributions are often invisible, until their absence would have been catastrophic. Adams did not act to be seen. He acted to change the situation. Recognition came later, detached from the reality of the moment. This is a lesson often ignored in how societies talk about resilience and toughness. Performing well under pressure does not make someone immune to its effects. Functioning is not the same as feeling fine. Adams coped by narrowing his identity, focusing on routine, and refusing to let one moment define his entire life. That restraint may have been his way of staying intact. Finally, there is a lesson in **** how history is preserved or lost. Adams' action mattered enormously in its moment. It saved lives. It changed outcomes. Yet without documentation, it would have vanished like countless others. History is not a complete record of what mattered. It is a partial archive of what survived long enough to be written down. This means that absence from history does not equal absence of significance. The responsibility, then, does not rest only on those who act, but on those who remember, record, and transmit. By retelling stories like this, we are not glorifying violence. We are acknowledging human decision-making under extreme conditions and extracting meaning that can still be applied. There is also a lesson in how Adams viewed fairness. He never believed the medal meant he was better than those who did not receive one. He understood that courage and competence are widely distributed, while recognition is not. This perspective runs counter to the way societies like to rank people. We prefer visible hierarchies, symbols, and awards. Adams' quiet discomfort with that hierarchy reminds us that outcomes are not always proportional to effort or merit. This matters because it challenges how we judge ourselves and others. When success is mistaken for superiority, failure is mistaken for weakness. Adams knew both conclusions were flawed. Some men who acted with equal resolve died. Some who survived never faced the same test. The lesson is not cynicism, but realism. Acknowledging randomness does not strip actions of meaning. It prevents us from turning them into myths that distort reality. Another enduring lesson lies in ****, responsibility without spectacle. Adams did what needed to be done when no one could help him and no one was watching. He did not escalate, dramatize, or narrate his actions. He solved problems sequentially until the situation changed. In a world increasingly driven by visibility and performance, this kind of responsibility feels almost foreign. Yet it is precisely this quiet competence that sustains institutions, communities, and lives over time. Finally, the Mortagne Forest teaches that ***, most decisive moments are brief. 10 minutes altered the fate of hundreds, yet those 10 minutes did not define the rest of Adams' life. This is an important balance. Some moments matter enormously, most do not. Knowing which is which, and not confusing intensity with permanence, is part of wisdom. Lucien Adams did not try to be remembered. He tried to survive, then to live. In doing so, he left behind something more useful than legend, a quiet example of how an individual can act decisively under impossible conditions and then return, without spectacle, to the long work of being human. One last layer of meaning emerges when we strip away both heroism and tragedy and look only at function. In the Mortagne Forest, Adams functioned when the system around him stopped functioning. That is the most transferable lesson of all. Systems fail not because they are weak, but because they reach conditions they were never designed to handle. When that happens, survival depends on individuals who can temporarily replace structure with judgment. Adams did not reject the system. He was trained by it, disciplined by it, and shaped by it. But he also knew when to stop relying on it. This balance, loyalty without dependence, is rare. Many people either cling to rules until they collapse with them, or reject structure entirely and descend into chaos. Adams did neither. He used structure as a foundation, then acted independently when it no longer applied. That is the mark of true competence. This teaches a crucial lesson about leadership that is often misunderstood. Leadership is not always about command, visibility, or authority. Sometimes it is about absorbing uncertainty, so others do not have to. Adams did not rally Company K with words. He did not issue orders. He removed the obstacle that made leadership impossible in the first place. Only after the machine guns were gone could normal command resume. In that sense, leadership preceded hierarchy, not the other way around. There is also a lesson in emotional containment, Adams did not allow fear, anger, or urgency to dictate his actions. That does not mean he did not feel them. It means he did not outsource decision-making to them. Emotional control under stress is not suppression. It is prioritization. The task came first. Feelings came later. Many people fail under pressure not because they lack ability, but because emotion overwhelms sequencing. Adams stayed alive because he acted in the correct order. This extends into everyday life more than most people realize. Crises at work, in families, or within oneself often feel overwhelming because everything appears urgent at once. Adams' approach deals with the nearest threat, then the next, then reassess applies anywhere complexity exists. Progress does not require solving everything. It requires solving the right thing first. Another subtle lesson is respect for the opponent. Adams never underestimated the Germans. He did not treat them as incompetent or foolish. He assumed they were skilled, disciplined, and dangerous, and acted accordingly. This mindset prevented complacency. Overconfidence kills faster than fear. By assuming competence on the other side, Adams stayed sharp. In non-combat settings, this translates into preparing seriously, questioning assumptions, and not mistaking familiarity for safety. Finally, the enduring lesson of this story is about meaning without exaggeration, Adams' actions mattered. They saved lives. They deserved recognition. But they did not require inflation into myth. When stories are exaggerated, they become entertainment. When they are grounded, they become instruction. Adams' story endures because it resists spectacle and remains rooted in cause and effect. In the end, the Mortagne Forest does not teach us how to be heroes. It teaches us how to remain functional when conditions collapse, how to think clearly when predictability becomes lethal, and how to act decisively without becoming consumed by the act itself. That may be the most difficult lesson of all. The story of Lucien Adams ultimately offers a deeper, more demanding lesson than courage or tactical skill. It forces us to confront how humans operate when stripped of comfort, certainty, and narrative In the Mortagne Forest, there was no meaning being created in real time. There was no sense of history unfolding. There was only function, movement, distance, sound, timing, ammunition. Meaning was added later, by others, after survival had already been decided. This distinction matters because most people misunderstand how decisive moments actually feel. They expect clarity, emotion, even drama. Adams experienced none of that. He experienced fragmentation of sound, of perception, of time. His effectiveness came from the ability to reduce chaos into manageable units. One gun, one position, one decision, then the next. This is not instinct alone. It is trained restraint applied under pressure. This applies equally to civilian life. Careers collapse, relationships break, systems fail. People panic because they attempt to restore the old structure rather than operate within the new reality. Adams did not try to restore Company K's stalled assault. He accepted that it had failed. His task was not progress in theory, but progress in fact. This ability to abandon a failed approach without emotional attachment is rare and powerful. In everyday life, Distraction is often framed as a productivity issue. In truth, it is a survival issue of a different kind. When attention is scattered, decision quality degrades. Adam's example shows that controlling attention is not about calm environments, but about internal discipline. He controlled what entered his mind because his life depended on it. The principle remains valid even when the stakes are lower. There is also a lesson in *** sequencing over speed ***. Adams moved quickly, but never out of order. He did not rush past a threat to address a future one. He did not chase retreating soldiers while a machine gun remained active. Every action followed a strict sequence. Neutralize immediate threat. Reassess. Move. Speed without sequence leads to chaos. Sequence creates momentum. Another critical lesson lies in ***, how Adams handled isolation ***. For 10 minutes, he was completely alone in functional terms. No support, no communication, no backup. This kind of isolation is psychologically destabilizing. Many people depend on feedback, confirmation that they are doing the right thing. Adams had none. He operated without validation, relying solely on judgment and outcome. The gun stops firing, or it does not. You live, or you die. There is also a lesson in ***, ending action at the correct moment ***. Adams stopped firing when the MG-42 stopped. He did not continue out of anger or fear. He conserved ammunition and mental energy. Many failures occur not because people do too little, but because they do too much. Overreaction creates new problems. Adams's restraint prevented escalation and preserved his ability to respond to the next threat. This restraint extended beyond combat. After the war, he did not relive the event endlessly. He did not seek platforms to retell it. He allowed the moment to end. This ability to let events conclude, rather than dragging them forward psychologically, is essential for long-term stability. People who cannot end experiences properly remain trapped inside them. Another lesson concerns ***, identity compression ***. Adams refused to let one moment define him entirely. This runs counter to how society prefers stories. We want a single defining trait, a single label. Hero, survivor, legend. Adams resisted this simplification. He understood that identity built around extremes becomes brittle. When life returns to normal scale, such identities collapse. Instead, he returned to roles that were deliberately ordinary: student, instructor, engineer, husband. These roles provided continuity and proportion. The lesson here is subtle but profound. ***, a stable identity is broad, not intense ***. It draws from many sources rather than one peak experience. The story also challenges how we think about ***, legacy ***. Adam's physical legacy is minimal: a medal in a museum, a name in records, a brief obituary. Yet the practical effect of his action, hundreds of lives continued, families intact, futures preserved, is immeasurable and invisible. This disconnect teaches that legacy is often indirect. The most meaningful impacts are those we never witness. In a world obsessed with visibility, this is uncomfortable. People want proof that their actions mattered. Adams never had that proof in emotional terms. He accepted ambiguity. This acceptance is not resignation. It is maturity. It recognizes that value does not require constant reinforcement. Finally, the deepest lesson of all is about ***, agency under constraint ***. Adams did not change the war. He did not even change the campaign. He changed 10 minutes and a few hundred meters of forest. That was enough. Many people delay action because they believe their contribution must be large to matter. Adams' story disproves this completely. Small, precise actions at critical moments can outweigh vast, unfocused effort. Agency does not mean unlimited power. It means the ability to choose effectively within limits. Adams had limits: ammunition, visibility, distance, time. Within those limits, he acted decisively. That is the model. The Morton Forest teaches us that systems break, predictability kills, and clarity under pressure is rare but learnable. It teaches that recognition is secondary to function, and identity must survive success as much as failure. It teaches that stepping off the expected path is not rebellion, but awareness. Lucien Adams did not seek to be remembered. He sought to solve a problem that could not be solved any other way. The fact that we can still extract lessons from that moment decades later is not because it was dramatic, but because it was precise. And precision, under impossible conditions, is what truly saves lives. The interior was shattered. Bodies torn by blast pressure lay against the walls. Ammunition belts hung loose from silent machine guns. 3 Japanese soldiers remained alive, all wounded. Perez moved through them with the buttstock and bayonet, finishing the fight at arm's length. When he stepped back outside, the twin machine guns that had pinned down Company A for 4 hours were silent. The geometry was broken. The trap had closed. By the time Perez emerged from the pillbox, Company A was already moving. Men who had spent the entire day pinned to the ground rose cautiously, then, with growing confidence, advancing past the position that had killed their friends and stopped them cold. The ground around the bunker was littered with spent casings, shattered concrete, and bodies that marked where the advance had failed again and again. Now there was no fire, no warning bursts, just silence. Lieutenant Morrison reached Perez first. He entered the bunker, counted the dead inside, then walked back to the tunnel exit and counted again. 10 bodies in the pillbox. 8 at the tunnel. The men who had died earlier on the approach were excluded. The final tally for the position stood at 18 confirmed kills. 1 soldier. 4 minutes. A single grenade and a plan. Major Burgess arrived shortly after. He questioned Perez carefully, step by step, tracing the route of his approach, the grenade throw, the sprint to the tunnel, the kill zone he had created without orders or coordination. Burgess wrote everything down. He understood what had happened. This was not reckless bravery. It was applied logic under fire. By 1645 hours, Fort McKinley's perimeter was secured. The division advanced through the breach at 1,730. The next objective, Nichols Field, fell within 6 hours. What had been projected as a 3-day operation collapsed into a single afternoon. The cost in American lives stopped climbing the moment those machine guns went quiet. The paperwork did not keep pace with the result. A Silver Star recommendation was drafted and rejected. The quota had been filled. Burgess ignored the refusal. He escalated the action directly to a Medal of Honor citation, returning to the battlefield himself to measure distances, photograph positions, and gather sworn statements. He treated the fight the way Perez had treated the pillbox. Methodically, precisely, without accepting the first answer. Perez never knew any of this. He was reassigned to point on patrols, the most dangerous position, the place given to soldiers who had proven they could think under pressure. 29 days later, a single rifle shot from a sniper hidden high in a palm tree ended his war. He was 22 years old. What remained was not just a destroyed bunker, but a lesson written into the ground at Fort McKinley. Firepower had failed. Courage alone had failed. The problem had only been solved when someone stopped trying to overpower the enemy and instead predicted what they would do next and built a mechanism that made every choice lethal. The men of Company A did not hold a ceremony when they passed the pillbox. They did not stop to mark the spot or speak his name. They kept moving, because in war, silence is the signal that matters. The silence meant they were alive. It meant the geometry that had been killing them all day was gone. 15 days after the fight, the Medal of Honor was approved. It moved faster than most paperwork in wartime because the evidence was undeniable. Measurements, maps, witness statements, photographs. Every step of Perez's movement had been reconstructed. Not to glorify him, but to prove that what he had done was real. The medal would never reach him. On March 14th, 1945, Perez walked point on a patrol near Santa Tomas. A Japanese sniper waited high in a coconut palm. One shot. Perez fell where he stood. No warning. No chance to react. The same logic he had used against the bunker was used against him. The first man dies first. A year later, his father received the medal on a bridge between two countries. American officers stood beside Mexican dignitaries. The citation was read aloud. 18 enemy soldiers killed while neutralizing a fortified position. The language was formal, restrained, incapable of capturing what had really happened in 4 minutes of decision-making under fire. What the citation did not say was that 160 men walked through that breach because one soldier understood something simple and brutal. Under pressure, humans do not act creatively. They act predictably. They run toward what feels familiar. Perez did not fight the bunker. He fought the behavior of the men inside it. The pillbox had been designed to stop courage. It was never designed to defeat a trap. The grenade was not the weapon. The tunnel was not the target. The real weapon was foresight applied without hesitation. Perez did not change the war. He changed an afternoon. But that afternoon determined who lived to see the next day. The men who walked past that silent bunker carried the proof with them, not in medals or speeches, but in the absence of gunfire. That is what his 4 minutes bought. Not glory, not survival, movement. Wars are usually remembered for massive offensives and famous generals. But most lives are decided in small places, by single decisions, made under pressure, with no audience. Fort McKinley was one of those places. A concrete bunker built to kill dozens was defeated not by superior firepower, but by a man who understood how fear moves people. Manuel Perez Jr. didn't overwhelm the enemy. He guided them. He forced them into a choice where every path ended the same way. 29 days later, the war took him the same way it takes so many others quietly, without warning. A single shot from someone who had also learned where to wait and when to fire. What remains is not the medal, the schools, or the plaques. It is the moment when the guns went silent and 160 men stood up and walked forward instead of dying where they lay. The story of Manuel Perez Jr. is often told as an act of extraordinary courage, but courage alone does not explain what happened at Fort McKinley. Courage had already been spent that day. 12 men had charged that bunker with courage and never stood up again. Courage had crawled forward under machine gun fire, thrown grenades, dragged wounded men back through dirt and blood, and still the pillbox remained. What stopped the killing was not bravery, it was understanding. Perez did not see the bunker as an object to be destroyed. He saw it as a system operated by people. Concrete, steel, and guns only mattered because men were inside them, making decisions under pressure. Every defensive structure assumes one thing about human behavior: that attackers will try to break in from the front and defenders will hold their ground. Perez broke that assumption. He realized that no matter how disciplined soldiers are, fear compresses time and options. When a grenade lands at your feet, doctrine disappears. Instinct takes over. The trap worked because it did not rely on heroics or speed. It relied on prediction. Perez did not need to know who was inside the bunker, how brave they were, or how well trained. He only needed to know what people do when an enclosed space turns into a blast chamber. They run, and they run toward what they already know. The tunnel exit was not just an escape route. It was a habit formed long before that day. It was familiar. Familiarity becomes irresistible under stress. This is the uncomfortable truth of combat that training manuals rarely admit. Most lethal outcomes are not created by superior weapons, but by forcing predictable reactions. Perez did not defeat the Japanese soldiers by overpowering them. He defeated them by narrowing their choices until every option led through the same fatal space. The grenade was only the trigger. The real weapon was the tunnel. There is a broader lesson here about problem solving under extreme pressure. Every officer on that field saw the same bunker. They evaluated it through the lens of doctrine: suppress, flank, assault, repeat. Perez looked at it sideways. He asked a different question. Instead of asking how to kill the bunker, he asked how the men inside would try to survive. That shift in perspective turned an impossible tactical problem into a solvable one. This kind of thinking is rare, not because it is complex, but because it is emotionally difficult. When men around you are dying, the urge is to act louder, faster, harder.